My name is Lauren, and I'm 34, a single mom from Ohio. Family reunions at my parents' backyard always felt like warmth with picnic tables, string lights, and laughter. My daughter Sadie, 8 years old, was the spark, her giggles lighting up the night. But that July evening in 2025, everything changed. During karaoke, my brother Caleb slapped Sadie's cheek for singing too loudly. My parents laughed, dismissing her tears. The microphone caught his cruel words, echoing my worst fears. How could family betray us like that? Have you ever felt your heart break at a family gathering? Share where you're watching from, like and subscribe to hear how I faced this pain. Sadie's hand trembled in mine as we slipped away from the picnic tables, the hum of family chatter fading behind us. I led her toward the garage, my pulse pounding, her small frame huddling close. The sting of Caleb's slap lingered in my mind, but I clung to a shred of hope. Maybe he'd see her tear-streaked face and soften. He was my big brother, the one who'd once carried me piggyback through summer fields. I needed to believe he could still be that person. The garage smelled of oil and old paint cans, a dim bulb casting shadows. Caleb leaned against a workbench, scrolling his phone. His broad shoulders relaxed like nothing had happened. Sadie clung to my leg, her usual chatter silenced. I cleared my throat, forcing calm. Caleb, we need to talk about what you did. He glanced up, his hazel eyes narrowing, that familiar smirk curling his lips. What, Lauren? Your kid was screaming like a banshee. Someone had to shut her up. His voice was sharp, slicing through my hope. I tightened my grip on Sadie's hand, her fingers cold. She's 8, I said, my voice low but firm. You don't hit a child for singing. My chest tightened, memories of our childhood flickering. Caleb, the star quarterback, always got a pass from mom and dad, while I, the dreamer sketching in corners, was told to toughen up. I thought he'd changed, especially with Sadie. She'd spent last summer trailing him like a puppy, giggling at his silly magic tricks. He snorted, tossing his phone onto the workbench. You're too soft, Lauren. Always have been. She's got to learn respect, not this wild nonsense you let her get away with. His words echoed Dad's old lectures, the ones that left me feeling small. I glanced at Sadie, her eyes fixed on the concrete floor, and my stomach twisted. I should have seen this coming. Caleb's jabs at my parenting had grown sharper lately, snide comments about Sadie's energy or my chaotic life as a single mom. Before I could respond, the garage door creaked open. My cousin Tara stepped in, her auburn hair tied back, her face etched with concern. She'd always been the peacemaker, the one who smoothed over family spats. Everything okay? She asked, her gaze flicking between us. Caleb rolled his eyes. Tell your cousin to stop overreacting, Tara. She's acting like I beat the kid. He straightened, towering over us. You got no idea how easy you've got it, Lauren. No job stress, just playing mom all day. Try living my life for once. I froze, his words cutting deeper than I expected. Easy? I'd been up at dawn freelancing graphic designs to pay rent, scraping by to give Sadie a good life. Tara stepped closer, her voice gentle but firm. Caleb, that's not fair. Lauren's doing her best. And Sadie didn't deserve that. He laughed, a harsh bark that made Sadie flinch. Best she's raising a brat who'll end up just like her, flighty, no discipline. He grabbed his phone and brushed past us, his shoulder grazing mine. The door slammed shut, leaving a heavy silence. Tara touched my arm, her brown eyes soft. He's been off lately. I heard he lost his sales job. Might be why he's lashing out. Her words offered context, but they didn't ease the ache. Job or not, he'd crossed a line. I looked down at Sadie. Her face pale and guilt washed over me. I'd trusted Caleb, let him into her world, and now she was paying for it. I knelt, brushing a curl from her forehead. You okay, sweetheart? She nodded, but her eyes were distant, like she was holding something back. I stood, my resolve hardening. I wanted to march back to the party, demand answers from Mom and Dad, but Tara's hand stopped me. Give it a minute, she said. Let's get Sadie some water, figure out what's next. I nodded, but my mind raced. Caleb's cruelty wasn't new, but this was different. He'd hurt my daughter, and my parents' laughter still echoed in my ears. As we stepped back into the evening air, I caught a glimpse of Caleb's fiancée Elise standing near the patio. Her arms were crossed, her expression troubled, like she'd seen something she couldn't unsee. I wondered what she knew, but Sadie's small hand in mine pulled me back. Whatever came next, I had to protect her, even if it meant facing my family alone. The backyard buzzed with clinking glasses and bursts of laughter as Tara led Sadie to the drink table, her small hand still clutching mine for a moment before letting go. I forced a smile watching Sadie pick up a plastic cup, her movement slow like she was carrying a weight no one else could see. The string lights overhead cast a warm glow, but the air felt heavy pressing against my chest. I scanned the crowd hoping to catch Mom or Dad's eye to see some hint of regret for laughing at Sadie's pain. Instead, they were at the center of the party. Dad's booming voice recounting a fishing story, Mom nodding along, her silver earrings glinting. Tara handed Sadie a lemonade, then leaned close to me, her voice low. I didn't want to say earlier, but Caleb's been off for months. Lost his job at the car dealership. He's been dodging questions about it. Her words landed like a stone in my gut. I pictured Caleb's polished suits, his confident strut. He'd always been the one who had it together, the one Mom bragged about at church. But that didn't justify what he'd done. I knotted my throat tight, unsure how to process it. We rejoined the picnic tables, Sadie sitting close, her eyes fixed on her cup. The family had moved on, cousins swapping stories about their kids' soccer games, aunts passing around a tray of brownies. It was as if nothing had happened, as if my daughter's red cheek was just a blip. I sat across from Mom and Dad, willing myself to speak, to demand they explain why they'd laughed. But before I could, Dad leaned forward, his graying mustache twitching as he fixed his gaze on me. "Lauren, you gotta teach that girl some manners," he said loud enough for the table to hear. "Caleb was just doing what you won't. Kids need a firm hand." His tone was casual, like he was commenting on the weather, but it cut deep. I froze, my fork hovering over my plate. Sadie's shoulders hunched, her fingers tightening around her cup. Mom chimed in, her voice softer, but no less sharp. "He's right, honey. Sadie's sweet, but she's all over the place. You let her run wild." She reached for a napkin, wiping her hands, her eyes avoiding mine. I stared at them, my parents. The people who'd raised me, who'd bandaged my scraped knees and cheered at my art shows. How could they sit there dismissing Sadie's hurt like it was her fault? My voice shook as I spoke. She was singing Dad. Singing. And Caleb hit her. You laughed. The words felt raw, scraping my throat. A few cousins glanced over their chatter, quieting. Dad's face hardened, his jaw set. "You're making a mountain out of nothing," he said. "She's fine. Look at her." He gestured at Sadie, who was staring at her lap, her lemonade untouched. Fine. Her eyes were glassy, her spark gone. I wanted to scream, to shake them until they saw her pain, but the table had gone silent, eyes darting away. Tara reached for my hand, under the table, squeezing gently, but it wasn't enough to anchor me. I stood my chair, scraping the grass, and took Sadie's hand. "We need some air," I muttered, leading her toward the house. Inside, the kitchen was quiet, the hum of the fridge a stark contrast to the party outside. Sadie sat at the counter, kicking her sneakers against the stool. I grabbed her sketchbook from my purse, hoping it would comfort her, and slid it across. "Draw something for me, okay?" I said, my voice soft. She nodded, flipping it open, her pencil moving slowly. I watched her, my heart aching. Her drawings were usually bursting with color flowers and dogs and sunny skies. Now her lines were faint, hesitant. I turned away, gripping the counter, fighting the urge to cry. Tara slipped in, closing the door behind her. "They're wrong, Lauren," she said, her voice fierce. "You're a great mom. Sadie's lucky to have you." I wanted to believe her, but doubt gnawed at me. Had I been too lenient? Was Sadie's energy my failure? I shook my head, pushing the thoughts away. Before I could respond, I heard Mom's voice through the open window, sharp and clear. "Lauren's always been dramatic," she said to Aunt Clara, turning a little discipline into a crisis. "She needs to grow up." The words hit like a slap, stealing my breath. Sadie's pencil stopped her eyes, lifting to mine wide and searching. She'd heard it too. My stomach churned a mix of rage and shame. How could my own mother say that after everything I pulled Sadie close, her sketchbook forgotten, and vowed to protect her no matter what it took? The morning sun filtered through the park's oak trees, casting dappled shadows on the gravel path. Sadie scuffed her sneakers beside me, her backpack bouncing lightly, her usual chatter replaced by a heavy silence. After last night's dinner with Mom's cutting words still ringing in my ears, I couldn't stay in that house another minute. I'd woken early, packed a few things, and driven us to this quiet park 10 minutes from my parents' place. I needed space to breathe, to think, to figure out how to help Sadie heal. I glanced at her, my heart twisting. Her ponytail swung as she walked, but her eyes stayed down, fixed on the ground. She hadn't touched her sketchbook since we left the kitchen, hadn't hummed or skipped like she usually did. I wanted to scoop her up, promise her everything would be okay, but the weight of my own doubts held me back. Was I failing her? Had I let my family's harshness shape her world too long? We settled on a bench near the playground, the distant squeal of kids on swings, a stark contrast to our quiet. I pulled out a granola bar from my bag, offering it to her. "Hungry, sweetheart?" She shook her head, her small fingers tugging at a loose thread on her jeans. I swallowed hard, fighting the urge to press her. I'd always trusted Sadie to open up when she was ready, but this silence felt different, like a wall I didn't know how to climb. My phone buzzed and I glanced at the screen. A text from Jenna, my old friend from college who'd moved back to town last year. "Heard about the reunion. You okay? Want to meet up?" I exhaled, grateful for her timing. Jenna was a therapist now, sharp and kind, the kind of person who could read a room without trying. I texted back asking her to join us at the park, hoping she could help me navigate this mess. As we waited, I leaned back, the bench's wooden slats cool against my spine. Memories of my childhood crept in uninvited. Dad's voice, gruff and unyielding, telling me to stop crying over a bad grade, that emotions were a weakness. I'd spent years proving him wrong, building a life where I could feel deeply and still be strong. But now, watching Sadie's slumped shoulders, I wondered if I'd been naive. Maybe I'd let her be too free, too loud, and now she was paying for it. Jenna arrived 20 minutes later, her curly blonde hair pulled into a messy bun, her sneakers crunching on the gravel. She sat beside us, her warm smile softening the tension in my chest. "Hey, Sadie," she said, her voice gentle. "Love those sparkly laces." Sadie managed a small nod, her fingers still picking at her jeans. Jenna's eyes met mine, her brow furrowing slightly, and I knew she saw it, the change in Sadie, the dimming of her light. We talked quietly, keeping our voices low so Sadie could tune us out if she wanted. I told Jenna about Caleb's slap, my parents' laughter, and Mom's cruel comment at dinner. My voice cracked as I admitted how lost I felt, how I couldn't shake the guilt for not protecting Sadie sooner. Jenna listened, her green eyes steady, then leaned closer. "Lauren, you're not the problem here. Sadie's hurting, but she's got you. That's huge. Just don't rush into anything drastic. Give her time, and yourself too." Her words were a lifeline, but they didn't erase the anger simmering beneath my skin. I glanced at Sadie, who'd pulled out her sketchbook and started drawing, her pencil moving in slow, deliberate strokes. I leaned over, expecting her usual bright doodles, but my breath caught. She'd drawn our dog Max curled up under a tree, but the sky above was filled with heavy, dark clouds smudged with gray. It was a quiet cry for help, one I hadn't seen coming. Jenna followed my gaze, her expression softening. "She's processing," she whispered. "Let her lead, but keep her close." I nodded, my throat tight, but before I could respond, my phone buzzed again. Another text, this time from Tara. "You need to know Caleb's been talking at church, saying you're unstable, that Sadie's out of control. People are listening." I stared at the screen, my pulse spiking. Caleb wasn't just dismissing what he'd done. He was twisting it, painting me as the failure, the bad mom. My hands shook as I showed Jenna the text. Her jaw tightened, but she kept her voice calm. "He's deflecting. People like that, they rewrite the story to save themselves." She paused, then added, "But you need to decide how to handle this. It's getting bigger than the family now." I tucked my phone away, my mind racing. The park felt smaller, the air thicker. Sadie's pencil scratched softly, her clouds growing darker. I wanted to confront Caleb, to scream at him for dragging our pain into public, but Jenna's warning echoed, "Don't act rashly." I looked at Sadie. Her small frame hunched over her drawing and felt a surge of resolve. I had to protect her, but how? As I wrestled with the question, my phone lit up again, this time with a text from Elise, Caleb's fiancée. "Can we talk alone? I know something about Caleb." My stomach twisted, a mix of dread and curiosity. What could she possibly say that would make this worse? I left Sadie with Jenna at the park, promising to be back soon, my heart pounding as I drove to the coffee shop to meet Elise. The morning air was crisp, but my palms were sweaty, gripping the steering wheel. Elise's text had been vague, but her urgency gnawed at me. What did she know about Caleb that I didn't? I pulled into the lot of Brood Awakening, a small place with mismatched chairs and the smell of roasted beans. Elise was already there, tucked in a corner booth. Her dark hair pulled tight, her fingers twisting a napkin into knots. I slid into the seat across from her, my voice low. "Thanks for meeting me." "What's going on?" Elise's eyes darted around like she was afraid someone might overhear. She leaned forward, her voice barely above a whisper. "Lauren, I'm sorry about Sadie. I saw what Caleb did at the reunion. It wasn't right. But there's more you need to know." My stomach tightened, a mix of dread and anger. "More like what?" I asked, bracing myself. Elise hesitated, then pulled out her phone, scrolling to a text thread. She slid it across the table. "Read this." I glanced at the screen, my eyes scanning Caleb's words from last week. "She's just like Lauren, always causing trouble. Kid needs to learn her place." My breath caught the words slicing through me. He'd been talking about Sadie, planning to fix her long before the slap. Elise's voice shook as she spoke. "He's been like this with me too. Little things at first, snapping if I forget something, telling me I'm too emotional. But it's getting worse. Last night he yelled at me for not backing him up at the reunion. Said I embarrassed him." Her eyes glistened, and I saw the weight she'd been carrying. I wanted to reach out to tell her she didn't deserve this, but my own pain held me back. Caleb wasn't just cruel to Sadie. He was a pattern, a storm leaving wreckage wherever he went. I handed her phone back, my hands trembling. "Why are you telling me this now?" I asked, my voice sharper than I meant. Elise looked down, shredding the napkin. "Because I'm leaving him. I can't do this anymore. But you deserve to know who he really is." Her words hit hard, confirming what I'd feared. Caleb's cruelty wasn't a one-off, wasn't just a bad day. It was him. I drove back to my parents' house, Elise's words looping in my mind, each one tightening the knot in my chest. I'd hoped to keep Sadie away for the day, but we'd left her favorite stuffed bunny in the guest room, and she'd been asking for it. The house loomed ahead, its white siding and neat flower beds mocking the chaos inside. I slipped in quietly, hoping to avoid everyone, but Dad was in the living room, his recliner creaking as he flipped through a fishing magazine. He looked up, his gray eyes narrowing. "Back already?" "Thought you'd run off for good after that scene last night." His tone was light, but it stung like he was daring me to fight. I swallowed, clutching Sadie's bunny. "Just grabbing something for Sadie," I said, moving toward the stairs. But Dad wasn't done. "You know, Lauren, this family's got enough problems without you stirring up more. Caleb's just trying to help that girl. You're the one making it hard." I stopped my foot on the first step, rage flaring. "Help, he hit her dad. And you laughed." My voice shook, but I held his gaze. He leaned forward, his magazine slapping the coffee table. "Don't you raise your voice at me. Sadie's gotta learn respect same as you did. You're too soft, always have been." His words echoed Caleb's, a twisted family mantra I'd heard my whole life. I wanted to scream to tell him he was wrong, but the weight of his disapproval pinned me in place. Before I could respond, Mom appeared from the kitchen, a dish towel in her hands. "What's all this noise?" she asked, her voice clipped. I turned to her, desperate for a shred of understanding. "Mom, please. Sadie's hurting." Caleb crossed a line. "Why can't you see that?" she sighed, folding the towel with deliberate care. "Lauren, you're blowing this out of proportion. Caleb's under stress. You know he lost his job. He's family. We stick together, not tear each other apart." Her words were a gut punch, stealing my breath. Family sticking together meant excusing Caleb, dismissing Sadie's pain, dismissing me. I clutched the bunny tighter, my nails digging into its worn fur. "So Sadie doesn't matter?" I asked, my voice breaking. Mom's lips pursed, but she didn't answer, turning back to the kitchen. Dad picked up his magazine, the conversation over. I stumbled upstairs, my vision blurring with tears. In the guest room, I sank onto the bed, the bunny soft against my chest. I thought of Sadie at the park, her dark clouds, her silence, my parents' words. Their cold indifference piled onto the ache of Caleb's betrayal. I was losing them, losing the family I'd always fought to hold on to. As I sat there, my phone buzzed, a group text from Tara to the cousins planning a barbecue tomorrow. "Let's keep the peace," she wrote. But then I heard laughter from downstairs, Mom and Dad joking with Aunt Clara about the reunion, their voices carrying through the floorboards. "Sadie'll get over it," Mom said. "She's just like Lauren, too dramatic." Sadie's name in their mouths twisted into a joke, broke something inside me. The barbecue smoke curled into the evening sky, mingling with the hum of chatter and clinking beer bottles at my parents' second family gathering. I stood near the edge of the lawn, my arms crossed, watching Sadie play with a cousin's hula hoop. Her movements were careful, her laughter faint, like she was afraid to draw attention. I'd spent the day steeling myself, determined to keep her close to shield her from another blow. But my nerves were raw, Elise's revelations, and my parents' cold words still churning in my gut. I didn't want to be here, but Tara had convinced me to come, saying it might ease the family tension. I wasn't so sure. The backyard was packed, aunts and uncles sprawled across folding chairs, kids darting through the grass. A rented speaker blared country tunes, and the karaoke machine from the reunion sat on a table, its microphone glinting under string lights. I kept Sadie in my sightline, my heart pounding every time someone approached her. She'd been quiet all day, clutching her bunny, even during lunch, and I hated how small she seemed, how my family's cruelty had dimmed her. Caleb arrived late, striding in with a forced grin, a cooler slung over his shoulder. My stomach twisted at the sight of him, his broad frame cutting through the crowd like he owned the place. He hadn't texted or called since the reunion. No apology, no remorse. I caught Elise's absence, her decision to leave him a quiet victory I clung to, but it didn't erase the dread pooling in my chest. Caleb set the cooler down, cracking a beer and laughing with a cousin, his charm masking the ugliness I now knew too well. I stayed near Sadie, helping her with the hula hoop, forcing smiles to keep her calm. But my eyes kept flicking to Caleb, waiting for him to notice us, to say something. The air felt charged, like a storm brewing. Tara approached, a plate of potato salad in hand, her voice low. "You holding up okay?" she asked, her eyes searching mine. I nodded, but my throat was tight. "Just keeping an eye on her," I said, nodding toward Sadie. Tara squeezed my shoulder, but her gaze lingered on Caleb, her lips pressing thin. The evening wore on, the crowd loosening with drinks and music. Sadie wandered to the karaoke table, drawn to the microphone like a moth to light. I followed my pulse, quickening memories of the reunion, flashing her song cut short. Caleb's hand, the laughter. She picked up the mic, her small fingers wrapping around it, and started humming a soft tune barely audible over the chatter. I stood beside her, my hand on her shoulder, ready to pull her away if needed. Then Caleb's voice cut through loud and sharp from a nearby table. "What's she doing with that thing again? Girl's got no sense of quiet." A few cousins chuckled and my blood ran cold. Sadie froze her humming, stopping, her eyes darting to me. I tightened my grip on her shoulder, whispering, "You're okay, sweetheart. Keep going." But Caleb wasn't done. He stood, beer in hand, his voice carrying over the lawn. "Finally learned to shut up, huh? About time." The words landed like a slap, and Sadie's face crumpled, her hands trembling around the mic. The crowd quieted, heads turning, but no one spoke. My heart pounded, rage surging through me, hot and fierce. I stepped in front of Sadie, my voice low but steady. "Stop it, Caleb. Leave her alone." He laughed a harsh bark and took a swig of his beer. "Relax, Lauren. Just stating facts. Like mother, like daughter, useless both of you." The microphone still in Sadie's hands caught every word, amplifying them through the speaker. The crowd gasped, whispers rippling, but Caleb didn't notice his smirk widening. My vision narrowed, the world shrinking to his cruel face. Sadie's quiet sobs and the weight of every betrayal, his slap, my parents' laughter, their dismissal. Something snapped inside me, a dam breaking. I grabbed the mic from Sadie, my hands shaking, and turned to face the crowd. My voice trembled but grew louder with each word. "This is my daughter. She's 8 years old, and this man hit her for singing. He calls her useless, calls me useless, and you all stand there letting it happen." The yard went silent, faces frozen, beers halfway to lips. Caleb's smirk faltered, but he didn't move. I kept going, my voice cracking. "She's not useless. She's everything, and I'm done letting you hurt her." Sadie clung to my leg, her tears soaking my jeans, and I felt her fear, her trust fueling me. I didn't care about the stares, the awkward shifts in the crowd. I was shaking, my chest heaving, but I couldn't stop. A neighbor, Mr. Thompson, stood near the fence, his phone raised, recording his weathered face, pale. I didn't know then that his video would change everything, but in that moment, all I saw was Sadie, and all I felt was the need to protect her, no matter the cost. The silence in the backyard was deafening, my words hanging in the air like smoke. Sadie's small body pressed against mine. Her sobs muffled the microphone, now limp in my hand. The crowd stared, some with wide eyes, others looking away, their plates of ribs and coleslaw forgotten. I wanted them to feel it, to see the weight of Caleb's cruelty, but the quiet stretched heavy and suffocating. Then Dad's voice boomed from the patio, sharp enough to cut glass. "Lauren, that's enough. You're embarrassing this family." I turned, my legs unsteady, and saw him standing, his face flushed, hands planted on his hips. Mom stood beside him, her arms crossed, her lips a tight line. The sight of them united against me twisted the knife deeper. "Embarrassing," I said, my voice hoarse, barely holding together. "Caleb hit my daughter, your granddaughter, and you're worried about embarrassment." My words shook, raw and unfiltered, but Dad didn't flinch. He stepped forward, his boots crunching on the grass. "You're blowing this out of proportion, like always. Dragging our name through the mud for what? A little discipline. You're shaming us in front of everyone." His voice carried loud and commanding, the same tone he'd used when I was a kid, when my tears were met with lectures about toughness. The crowd shifted, some nodding faintly, others whispering their judgment, settling over me like dust. Mom spoke up, her voice softer but no less cutting. "Lauren, stop this. You're upsetting Sadie, making a spectacle. Let it go." She gestured towards Sadie, as if I were the one hurting her, as if my defense was the problem. I looked down at Sadie, her face buried in my side, her small hands clutching my shirt. Her bunny lay forgotten on the ground, its ear bent in the dirt. My chest ached, a hollow pain spreading. They were rewriting the story, painting me as the villain and Sadie as collateral damage. I opened my mouth to respond, but Caleb cut in, his voice dripping with mock pity. "Come on, Lauren, don't cry now. You always play the victim, don't you?" He leaned against a table, arms crossed, his beer bottle dangling from one hand. A few cousins chuckled nervously and my face burned. The microphone was off now, but his words still carried, each one a jab meant to humiliate. I wanted to lunge at him to make him feel the pain he'd caused, but Sadie's weight anchored me, her trembling keeping me still. Tara pushed through the crowd, her face pale but determined. "Caleb, that's enough," she said, her voice firm. "You're out of line." But Dad waved her off, his hand slicing the air. "Stay out of this, Tara. This is family business." The dismissal stung even for her, and I saw the hurt flash in her eyes. She stepped back, her hands clenching, and I felt the isolation deepen. Even Tara, my ally, was being silenced. Aunt Clara, usually quiet, spoke from a nearby chair, her voice thin but clear. "Lauren, maybe you should take Sadie inside. Calm down." Her words were meant to soothe, but they landed like a betrayal, another voice siding with peace over justice. I scanned the faces around me, cousins, neighbors, family friends, all watching, judging, waiting for me to back down. Mr. Thompson still held his phone, recording his expression unreadable. I didn't know Tara was filming too, her phone tucked discreetly in her hand, capturing every word for a parenting group chat that would soon explode. Sadie tugged at my hand, her voice a whisper. "Mommy, why don't they love me?" Her question shattered me, a knife to the heart. I knelt, pulling her close, my throat burning. "They do, baby," I lied, my voice cracking. "They just don't understand." But the truth was worse, they didn't care. Not about her pain, not about mine. I stood, my eyes locking with Caleb's, his smirk unchanged, and then with Dad's, his gaze cold and unyielding. Mom looked away, fussing with a napkin, her silence louder than words. The weight of their rejection crushed me, every hope I'd had for family, for understanding, crumbling into ash. I wanted to scream to make them see Sadie's worth, my worth, but my voice was gone, swallowed by the crowd's stares and my parents' dismissal. Caleb took a slow sip of his beer, his eyes mocking, and I felt the ground shift beneath me, my world fracturing with no way back. I drove home from the barbecue with Sadie asleep in the back seat, her bunny clutched tight, the weight of the night pressing on my chest. The backyard confrontation replayed in my mind. Dad's dismissal, Mom's silence, Caleb's mocking smirk, Sadie's whispered question, "Why don't they love me?" echoed louder than the crowd's stares. I gripped the steering wheel, my knuckles white, the Ohio streets blurring past. I'd stood up for her, but it wasn't enough. Words hadn't stopped Caleb's cruelty or shaken my parents' indifference. I needed to do more, something real, something that would protect Sadie and make them see. Back at our small apartment, I tucked Sadie into bed, her soft breath steadying me. I sat on the couch, the living room dim, a single lamp casting a warm glow over my laptop. My hands shook as I opened it, my mind racing. Caleb's actions couldn't be swept under the rug, not this time. I thought of Elise's courage, leaving him, and Tara's quiet support. I wasn't alone, but I felt the weight of this choice. Exposing Caleb publicly could tear our family apart for good, but staying silent would let him hurt Sadie again. I couldn't let that happen. I searched online for local journalists, my fingers hesitating over the keys. A name popped up: Rachel, a woman in her 40s who ran a community blog called Heartland Voices. Her posts tackled tough issues: school funding, domestic disputes, small-town scandals. I clicked her contact page, my heart pounding. Could I trust her with Sadie's story? I thought of Mr. Thompson's video, the one he'd taken at the barbecue, capturing Caleb's cruel words through the microphone. It was raw, undeniable proof. If I shared it, there'd be no going back. I drafted an email, my words careful but firm. "Rachel, my name is Lauren. My brother physically disciplined my 8-year-old daughter at a family event, and my parents dismissed it. I have a video. I want people to know what happened, to hold him accountable. Can we talk?" I attached the video, blurring Sadie's face with a quick edit to protect her. My cursor hovered over the send button, doubt creeping in. What if this backfired? What if it hurt Sadie more, exposing her pain to strangers? But then I pictured her at the barbecue, trembling, her trust in our family shattered. I hit send, my breath catching. The next morning, I dropped Sadie off at school, her backpack slung over one shoulder. She gave me a small smile, a flicker of her old spark, and I clung to it. Back home, my phone buzzed with a reply from Rachel. "Lauren, I watched the video. This is serious. Can you meet me today at Brood Awakening, 11 a.m.? My stomach flipped, a mix of relief and nerves. She'd seen it. She believed me. I texted Jenna, asking her to check on Sadie after school, then headed to the coffee shop, my resolve hardening with each step. Rachel was already there, her short brown hair tucked behind her ears, a notebook open on the table. She stood as I approached, her handshake warm but firm. "Lauren, thanks for coming," she said, her voice steady, professional. We sat and I poured out the story. Not just the barbecue, but the reunion, Caleb's slap, my parents' laughter, the years of their favoritism. My voice wavered, but I kept going, the weight of it spilling free. Rachel listened, jotting notes, her eyes narrowing when I mentioned Caleb's history of bullying. She tapped her pen against the notebook. This video is powerful, Lauren. It shows exactly who he is. But publishing it will stir things up. Are you ready for that? I swallowed, picturing Mom's disapproval, Dad's anger, the family's whispers. But then I saw Sadie's face, her quiet pain, and nodded. I have to be. For her. Rachel nodded back, her expression resolute. Okay. I'll dig into Caleb's background, see if there's a pattern. If we do this, we do it right. As I left the coffee shop, a strange calm settled over me. I'd taken the first step, not just for Sadie, but for myself, for the girl who'd spent years swallowing her family's criticism. I wasn't that girl anymore. I was a mother, and I was done letting Caleb's cruelty define us. My phone buzzed again, Tara asking to meet later. We need to talk about the family, she texted. Some cousins are taking Caleb's side. The words stung, but they didn't shake me. I was moving forward, and nothing would stop me now. I met Tara at a diner across town that afternoon, the kind with cracked vinyl booths and coffee that burned your tongue. She slid into the seat across from me, her auburn hair loose, her face tight with worry. The hum of the jukebox filled the space, but it couldn't drown out the tension between us. I sipped my iced tea, the glass sweating in my hand, and waited for her to speak. I'd already crossed a line with Rachel, and now Tara's text about the cousins picking sides had me bracing for more. Lauren, I'm on your side, she started, her voice low, but this is getting messy. Some of the cousins, Clara, Mark, even Aunt Sheila, they're saying, you overreacted, that Caleb was just disciplining Sadie. They're calling you dramatic. Her words stung, but I'd expected them. My family had always been quick to rally around Caleb, the golden son, while I was the one who made waves. I set my glass down, my fingers steady, despite the ache in my chest. Let them talk, I said, my voice quieter than I felt. Caleb hit my daughter Tara. He's not the victim here. She nodded, but her eyes flicked to the table like she was holding something back. I leaned forward. What else? Just say it. She sighed, picking at a napkin. They're saying you're trying to ruin him, airing family business to strangers. They don't know about the video yet, but if it gets out, it's gonna explode. I exhaled, the weight of her words settling in. I'd known going to Rachel would have consequences, but hearing it laid bare, the family turning, the whispers spreading, made it real. For a moment, I doubted myself, picturing Sadie caught in the fallout, her name dragged through gossip. But then I remembered her at school this morning, her small smile, fragile but there. She deserved better than silence, better than a family who excused her pain. Before I could respond, my phone lit up with a new email from Rachel. Lauren, I found records of workplace complaints against Caleb, 3 in the last 2 years, all for aggressive behavior. This strengthens your story. I'm drafting the post for tomorrow. Last chance to back out. My heart raced, a mix of fear and resolve. I showed Tara the email, watching her eyes widen. You're really doing this? She said, almost a whisper. I nodded, my jaw tight. I have to. For Sadie. That evening I sat at my kitchen table, the apartment quiet, except for the hum of the fridge. Sadie was in her room, coloring, her door cracked open so I could hear her soft humming. I opened my laptop, rereading Rachel's email, the words blurring as I wrestled with the choice. Publishing the video would expose Caleb, but it would also bare our family's ugliness to the world. I thought of Mom's pursed lips, Dad's booming voice, their refusal to see Sadie's hurt. They'd chosen Caleb over us, and that truth burned, but it also freed me. I typed a reply to Rachel, my fingers steady. Go ahead. Publish it. Let me know when it's live. I hit send, a quiet strength settling in my bones. This wasn't about revenge. It was about truth, about giving Sadie a voice when mine had been ignored for too long. I closed the laptop and walked to Sadie's room, leaning against the doorframe. She looked up, her crayons scattered, a drawing of a bright red kite soaring over a field taking shape. Looks beautiful, sweetheart, I said, my voice soft. She smiled, a real one this time, and my heart lifted. I sat beside her, picking up a crayon to add a cloud, our hands moving together. My phone buzzed again, a text from Elise. Found old texts from Caleb, mocking Sadie's tantrums. Sent them to Rachel. I'm done with him. I stared at the message, a surge of gratitude mixing with my resolve. Elise's evidence would seal Caleb's accountability, and I felt the pieces falling into place. Later, as I tucked Sadie into bed, her eyes heavy, I kissed her forehead, lingering a moment. "You're so strong," I whispered, more to myself than to her. She murmured something, already drifting off, and I stood, my gaze settling on a photo on her nightstand, us at the zoo last summer, laughing free. I'd spent years trying to hold my family together, swallowing their slights to keep the peace. But now I was choosing Sadie, choosing us. I turned off her light, the click of the switch echoing in the quiet, a small, deliberate act that felt like a promise. The morning after I sent Rachel the go-ahead, I woke to a flood of notifications. My phone buzzed relentlessly on the nightstand, each ping a jolt to my already frayed nerves. Sadie was still asleep, her small frame curled under a quilt, oblivious to the storm I'd unleashed. I sat on the edge of my bed, the apartment quiet, except for the faint drip of the kitchen faucet. My hands trembled as I opened Rachel's blog, Heartland Voices. There it was, the headline stark and unyielding: "Family betrayal at reunion, a brother's cruelty caught on video." Below it, Mr. Thompson's footage played Caleb's amplified words, "Useless both of you," cutting through the barbecue's chatter, followed by my shaking voice defending Sadie. I scrolled, my stomach churning. The comments section was alive, hundreds of strangers weighing in. Disgusting behavior. That poor girl. He needs to face consequences. Some were kinder, offering support, but others were vicious, calling Caleb names I wouldn't repeat. I set the phone down, my breath shallow. I'd wanted accountability, but seeing our pain laid bare, dissected by faceless readers, felt like a wound reopened. Had I done the right thing? Or had I exposed Sadie to more hurt? By noon, the post had spread beyond the blog. A local Facebook group shared it, then another, the video racking up thousands of views. My inbox filled with messages, some from neighbors I barely knew, others from strangers offering prayers for Sadie. One stood out from a woman named Clara, a single mom from Dayton. "My brother shamed my son for years. Thank you for speaking up. You're not alone." Her words steadied me, a reminder of why I'd done this, but the weight of the attention pressed harder. I was pouring coffee when my phone rang, Mom's name flashing on the screen. I froze, the mug warm against my palms, dread pooling in my gut. I answered, bracing myself. "Lauren, what have you done?" Her voice was sharp, trembling with fury. "You put that video online. You're destroying your brother, our family, for what?" Attention, her words hit like a slap, but I held my ground, my voice low. "I did it for Sadie," I said, my throat tight. "Caleb hurt her, and you let him. Someone had to stand up for her." Mom scoffed, a sound I'd never heard from her before. "You're selfish, Lauren. Always have been. We're done talking until you fix this." The line went dead, and I stood there, the coffee growing cold, her words echoing. Done. My own mother choosing Caleb over us, over Sadie's pain. I wanted to call her back, to beg her to understand, but the silence in the apartment stopped me. This was the cost, and I had to carry it. An hour later, another call came, Dad this time. I let it go to voicemail, too raw to face him. His message was gruff, his voice like gravel. "Lauren, you've gone too far. Caleb's lost his job because of that video. His boss saw it, suspended him. You happy now?" I played it again, then a third time, each word sinking deeper. Caleb's suspension hadn't been my goal, but I couldn't deny the flicker of justice it sparked. He'd built his life on charm, on skating by, but now his actions had consequences, ones he couldn't charm away. I checked on Sadie, who was eating cereal at the kitchen table, her crayons scattered beside her bowl. She looked up, her eyes brighter than they'd been in days. "Can we go to the library today?" she asked, her voice small but steady. I nodded, forcing a smile, but my mind was elsewhere. The world was shifting around us, and I'd set it in motion. Tara texted, her words cautious. Family's splitting. Some cousins are with you, but Mom and Dad are rallying others for Caleb. Be ready. I set the phone down, my chest tight, the fracture in our family now a chasm. As I cleared Sadie's dishes, a new email from Rachel popped up. Lauren, the story's gaining traction. A local TV station wants to interview you. Also, I found more on Caleb, another complaint from a former coworker filed last month. We're building a case. I stared at the screen, the words blurring. An interview meant more exposure, more eyes on Sadie's pain, but also more pressure on Caleb. I wanted to say yes to keep pushing, but the cost. Mom's call, Dad's voicemail, the family's divide froze me in place. My heart caught between justice and the ruins of the family I'd once known. I sat at the kitchen table. Rachel's email about the TV interview glowing on my laptop screen, the words swimming in my vision. Sadie's crayons lay scattered from her morning, drawing a half-finished picture of a tree with bright green leaves. I wanted to hold on to that image, her small spark of joy, but the world outside our apartment was closing in. The blog post had only been live for a day, but it had already unraveled Caleb's life and fractured mine further. I closed the laptop, my fingers cold, and tried to focus on the quiet, but my mind wouldn't settle. By afternoon, Caleb's response hit the internet. I found it on a local forum, a public statement he'd posted, his words polished but hollow. I regret any distress caused at the family event. It was a misunderstanding blown out of proportion by my sister's actions. I'm committed to making amends. The comments below tore him apart, strangers calling out his insincerity, but a few defended him, locals who'd known him as the charming salesman, the high school star. He's not a monster. One wrote, "Give him a break." I stared at the screen, my jaw tight. His half apology a fresh wound. He wasn't sorry, he was saving face. My phone buzzed, a text from Mark, a childhood friend of Caleb's I hadn't seen in years. Lauren heard about the video. I'm sorry. Caleb's always been jealous of you ever since you moved out, built your own life. He couldn't stand it. I read it twice, the words sinking in. Jealous Caleb with his flashy car, his corner office, envying my scraped-together life as a single mom. It explained the edge in his jabs, the bitterness in his eyes, but it didn't soften the hurt. If anything, it made his cruelty uglier, more personal. I took Sadie to the library as promised, hoping the familiar shelves would ground us. She wandered to the children's section, pulling out a book about space, her fingers tracing the glossy planets. I watched her, my chest loosening for a moment. But then my phone rang. Jenna. Lauren, you need to see this, she said, her voice urgent. She sent me a link to a community page where Rachel's post had been shared again, this time with a new twist. Someone had dug up Elise's restraining order against Caleb filed yesterday, citing his controlling behavior. The comments exploded, piling on the evidence Rachel had uncovered, workplace complaints, now this. Caleb's polished image was crumbling, and I'd lit the match. Back home, I found a package on our doorstep, a small box wrapped in brown paper. Inside were colored pencils and a sketch pad, a gift from a local mom who'd seen the blog. A note read, "For Sadie, from one mom to another. Keep shining." I set it on the counter, my throat tight. Strangers were rallying around us, their kindness a lifeline, but it couldn't fill the void left by my parents. I checked my phone, no calls, no texts from them since Mom's outburst. Their silence was louder than any argument, a wall I couldn't breach. Tara came over that evening, her face drawn as she sank onto my couch. "The family's a mess," she said, rubbing her temples. "Aunt Clara's hosting a meeting tomorrow, trying to fix things, but Mom and Dad won't budge. They're telling everyone you betrayed them." I nodded, the words no longer surprising, but they still cut. I poured us tea, the mug steaming, and we sat in quiet, the weight of the divide settling between us. Tara reached for my hand, her grip firm. "I'm with you, Lauren. So are a few others, but it's gonna get harder." Later, as I washed dishes, my phone lit up with a voicemail from Mom. I hesitated, my hands dripping, then played it, her voice filling the kitchen. "Lauren, I saw the blog. I can't believe you'd do this to us. But if you take it down, maybe we can talk. Think about it." Her tone was softer, almost pleading, but it carried an ultimatum, a line drawn in the sand. I deleted the message, my heart sinking, the faint hope of reconciliation snuffed out. I dried my hands, the towel rough against my skin, and stood in the quiet, the cost of my choice heavier than ever, pulling me into a stillness that felt like falling. Months had passed since Rachel's blog post turned our lives upside down, and the sharp edges of that summer were starting to soften. It was October now, the Ohio air crisp with the scent of fallen leaves. Sadie and I had settled into a new rhythm, our apartment a quiet haven from the storm that had raged through our family. I sat on our balcony, a mug of chamomile tea warming my hands, watching the neighborhood kids ride bikes in lazy circles below. The world felt steadier, like I could breathe without bracing for the next blow. Sadie was at school, her backpack heavier these days with books she loved, her steps lighter than they'd been in July. She'd started singing again, not the bold karaoke belting from before, but soft melodies during car rides, her voice threading through the radio's hum. I'd catch her in moments like that, my heart swelling, knowing she was finding her way back. Therapy with Jenna had helped, giving her words for the hurt tools to rebuild what Caleb and my parents had chipped away. I leaned back in my chair, the balcony railing cool against my arm, and let my mind wander. The fallout from the video had been brutal: Mom's ultimatum, Dad's silence, the cousins' divided loyalties, but it had also carved out space for something new. Tara had become a constant, her texts, a daily anchor, her laughter a reminder that family could mean more than blood. She'd started planning small gatherings with the cousins who'd stood by us, a new tradition taking root, one free of judgment. I hadn't realized how much I'd craved that, a circle where Sadie and I could just be. Inside, I'd hung one of Sadie's drawings on the fridge, a vibrant scene from her school art class, a girl flying a kite under a clear blue sky, no clouds in sight. It wasn't just a picture. It was a sign of her healing, a quiet victory. She'd told me last week after a session with Jenna that she felt lighter, her small hands gesturing like she was lifting a weight off her chest. I'd hugged her then, my throat tight, grateful for her resilience, for the way she still trusted me to guide her through. My phone buzzed on the table, a reminder of a meeting with Rachel tomorrow. Her blog had sparked a community forum on family dynamics, and she'd asked me to speak to share our story. The thought made my stomach flutter, but not with fear. I'd spent years shrinking from conflict, swallowing my voice to keep the peace. Now the idea of standing in a room telling our truth felt like a step towards something bigger, not just for Sadie, but for every parent fighting to protect their child. I sipped my tea, the warmth spreading through me, and thought about my parents. Their absence was a quiet ache, not the sharp stab it had been. I'd stopped checking my phone for their calls, stopped hoping for apologies that wouldn't come. But last night I'd found a box in my closet, old letters and photos from my teenage years. One was a note from Mom scribbled on a napkin tucked into my lunch during a tough week at school. "You're stronger than you know, Lauren." I'd stared at it, tracing her handwriting, wondering where that version of her had gone. The memory didn't hurt like I expected. Instead, it settled into me, a piece of the past I could hold without breaking. I wasn't the girl who needed her parents' approval anymore. I was Sadie's mom, my own anchor, and that was enough. The balcony door creaked as I stood, the neighborhood now quiet, the kids gone inside. I set my mug down, my breath slow, feeling the weight of the fight ease, if only for a moment, as I stepped back into the life we were building, one steady day at a time. The next day I drove to a small cafe on the edge of town, the kind with wooden tables and mismatched mugs, to meet Mom. Her voicemail from weeks ago, that faint olive branch, had lingered in my mind, and when she texted yesterday asking to talk, I agreed, though my heart stayed guarded. I parked the autumn leaves skittering across the lot and took a deep breath. This wasn't about fixing everything, it was about seeing if we could share the same air without breaking. Inside, Mom sat by a window, her hands wrapped around a coffee, her silver hair catching the light. She looked smaller, her usual poise softened by something I couldn't name. I slid into the chair across from her, my purse on my lap like a shield. "Thanks for coming," she said, her voice low, almost careful. I nodded, awaiting my fingers tracing the edge of the table. She started slow, her words measured. "Lauren, I've been thinking about Sadie, about what happened. I didn't handle it right. I'm sorry." Her apology was quiet, but it landed heavy, stirring a mix of relief and caution. I wanted to believe her, but the memory of her silence at the barbecue, her dismissal of Sadie's pain, held me back. "Why now?" I asked, my voice steady but sharp. "You didn't see it then." What changed? Mom's eyes dropped to her mug, her fingers tightening. "Your dad and we raised Caleb to be strong, maybe too harsh. I see that now. But I still think you went too far with that video." Her words stung, the old defensiveness creeping in, but there was a crack in her voice, a hint of doubt. She slid a folded letter across the table, her hand trembling slightly. "This is from your dad. He won't say it himself, but he's sorry too in his way." I took the letter, its edges worn, and tucked it into my purse without reading it. I wasn't ready for Dad's words, not yet. "Mom, this isn't about Caleb or Dad. It's about Sadie. She needed me to stand up for her, and I did. I can't take that back." My voice was calm, not angry but firm, a line drawn. Mom nodded, her lips pressing together, and for the first time I saw her as she was, not the mother I'd idolized, but a woman shaped by her own choices, her own regrets. We sat in silence, the cafe's hum filling the space. I didn't push her for more, and she didn't offer. It wasn't reconciliation, not fully, but it was enough for now, a step, not a leap. As I stood to leave, Mom reached out her hand, brushing mine. "Tell Sadie I miss her," she said, her voice breaking. I nodded, my throat tight, and walked out, the letter heavy in my purse, a tether to a past I was learning to carry lightly. Back home, I found Sadie in the living room, sprawled on the rug with her new sketch pad, the one sent by the stranger Mom. She was drawing a bird, its wings spread wide, the lines bold and free. "Look, Mommy," she said, holding it up, her eyes bright. I knelt beside her, my heart full, and traced the bird's outline with my finger. "It's perfect," I said, and she beamed her joy, a quiet anchor. That evening, I stood at the kitchen sink, washing dishes, the water warm against my hands. Rachel's forum was tomorrow, a chance to share our story, to help others. I wasn't nervous anymore, just ready. I'd spent so long running from my family's shadows, trying to prove I was enough. Now I knew I was Sadie's laughter, her art. Our small, steady life was proof. I dried my hands, the dish towel soft, and looked out the window at the darkening sky, the stars just beginning to show. I breathed slow, the world still, my heart at rest, ready for whatever came next. Winter had settled over Ohio, the kind that blanketed the streets in soft snow and turned the air sharp. I stood in our apartment's living room, stringing fairy lights along the window, their warm glow reflecting off the glass. Sadie was at school, her laughter from this morning still lingering in my mind. She'd insisted on wearing mismatched socks, one blue, one yellow, just because it felt right. That small act, her quiet defiance, was a reminder of how far we'd come since the summer's chaos. The past months had reshaped us, not in grand ways, but in the small, steady ones that mattered. I'd started a routine, waking early to sip coffee in the silence before Sadie stirred, letting the stillness ground me. My freelance design work had picked up enough to cover bills and tuck a little away for Sadie's future. The apartment felt fuller now, not with things, but with moments, her books piled on the couch, our Friday movie nights with popcorn scattered on the floor. I'd let go of waiting for Caleb to change. Word was, he'd moved to a new town, his life quieter, his charm dimmed by the weight of his actions. I didn't check on him, didn't need to. My parents and I had settled into a fragile distance, exchanging brief texts about holidays or Sadie's school plays, but no deeper. Mom sent a card for Sadie's birthday last month, a simple note inside, "Thinking of you." I kept it on a shelf, not out of hope, but as a marker of where we'd been. I stepped back from the fairy lights, adjusting a strand, and caught my reflection in the window. My face looked softer, the lines around my eyes, less from strain, and more from laughing with Sadie. I'd started something new last week, a small art class for kids at the community center. Just a handful of them all with big dreams and messy paintbrushes. I taught them to draw what they felt, not what they thought others wanted. It wasn't much, but it felt like planting seeds, like giving them what I'd fought to give Sadie, a space to be themselves. The community forum with Rachel had come and gone, my voice steady as I shared our story to a room of strangers who nodded, some with tears in their eyes. Afterward, a woman approached me, her hands nervous, and said my words gave her courage to confront her own family's silence. That moment stayed with me, a quiet ripple I hadn't expected. It wasn't about being a hero, it was about being honest, about showing Sadie that truth could build something stronger than pain. I moved to the kitchen, pulling out ingredients for dinner, the rhythm of chopping vegetables soothing. Sadie had a school concert tonight, her first since the reunion, and she'd been practicing a song about stars, her voice clear and unafraid. I'd promised to sit in the front row, my phone off, just me and her. The thought of her on stage, her small hands gripping the microphone, made my chest swell. She wasn't the girl who trembled in the backyard anymore, and I wasn't the woman who doubted her strength. As I stirred a pot of soup, the steam rising, I thought about the letter from Dad, the one Mom gave me at the cafe. I'd read it late one night, his handwriting shaky, admitting he'd pushed Caleb too hard, that he'd failed us both. It wasn't an apology, not fully, but it was enough to close a door I'd left cracked for too long. I didn't need their approval to know who I was, who Sadie was. We were enough, always had been. I set the table for two, the plates clinking softly, and glanced at the clock. Sadie would be home soon, her backpack bouncing, her stories spilling out. The fairy lights glowed behind me, a small constellation in our home, and I felt a quiet peace settle like snow blanketing the ground, covering the scars of summer with something clean and new. The auditorium was warm, filled with the soft rustle of parents settling into folding chairs, their whispers blending with the hum of anticipation. I sat in the front row, my hands folded in my lap, the stage lights casting a gentle glow. Sadie stood with her classmates, her yellow dress bright against the dark curtain, her hands clasped in front of her. She caught my eye and gave a small wave, her smile nervous but real. I waved back, my heart steady, anchored by the sight of her. The music started, a simple piano melody, and Sadie's voice rose with the others, singing about stars that burned bright even in the darkest nights. Her notes were clear, each one a quiet defiance, a reclaiming of the joy she'd lost that summer. I leaned forward, my breath catching, not from fear but from pride. She was shining not for approval, not to prove anything, but because she could, because she was enough. I felt tears prick my eyes, but I didn't wipe them away. They were hers, mine, ours. After the concert, we walked home through the snowy streets, her hand in mine, her chatter filling the crisp air. She talked about the stage, the lights, how she'd almost forgotten a line but kept going. I listened, nodding, my boots crunching on the sidewalk. The world felt small in that moment, just us and the snowflakes catching in her hair. I realized then how much had shifted, not just for her, but for me. I'd spent so long fighting to be seen by my parents, by Caleb, by the family I thought defined me. Now, walking beside Sadie, I knew I didn't need their gaze to stand tall. At home, we curled up on the couch, a blanket over our knees, hot cocoa steaming on the coffee table. Sadie sketched in her new pad, her pencil dancing across the page, creating a night sky filled with stars. I watched her, my mind quiet, and understood the lesson carved from our pain. Family isn't just the people you're born to, it's the ones who choose you, who see you, who stay. But more than that, it's about choosing yourself, standing firm in your truth, even when it hurts. I'd learned to hold my ground, not with anger, but with clarity, to protect Sadie's light and my own. That clarity was my freedom. It wasn't about winning or being right. It was about letting go of the need to prove anything at all. I'd faced Caleb's cruelty, my parents' silence, and the family's judgment, not to change them, but to reclaim us. Every step speaking at Rachel's forum, teaching kids to draw their hearts, watching Sadie sing, was a stitch in the fabric of a life we were weaving, one where love didn't come with conditions. I looked at Sadie, her head bent over her drawing, and knew I'd do it all again every painful moment to give her this peace. What's a moment that made you choose yourself, that set you free from someone else's shadow? Share it below. I'd love to hear your story. If this journey resonated with you, please like, subscribe, and share it with someone who might need it. Your support means the world, and I'm grateful for every one of you walking this path with us. Here's to finding your light, to carrying it forward no matter what. Thank you, and take care.